Welcome to SiegeCenter, our show where we break down everything that's happening inside of R6 Esports. My name is Highbear, here with my co-host Happy, and this is day 3 of Reload Rio. Starting things off today, game 1 was a heater. Furia against Team Secret, and Furia just continue their dominance against another great team. They're looking so good, and Brazil's favorite team are back in dynastic form as they drop Secret with relative ease. This really does look like Prime Furia to me. I'm incredibly impressed with what the team is doing, how they're looking, how well they've managed to put everything together. And I don't know, Happy. I'm starting to get a little bit scared for their opponents. Furia look like they might be back. And I don't want to take anything away from Secret. They looked good today, too, genuinely. They are hot, but Furia, I think, is just a little bit too much to ask. They're continuing to perform, they're looking strong, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they continue throughout this tournament because right now they look like one of the teams to beat.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's them and W7M who are like at the top as the teams to beat, especially when you consider who they've beaten so far. And it was an exciting game to start off. Like you said, Secret had a number of really impressive plays. Big game all the way through on Lair, but just not quite enough to make it happen all the way. But really impressive to stay so competitive with Furia in this form, looking like you said, kind of like peak Furia. It wasn't the only game we had on Lair going on at that time, though, as BDS versus CAG was happening at the exact same time, and CAG just couldn't quite get it done. They fail to get through and get really anything more than just a couple of rounds. It was a 5-0 start for Team BDS, and once they really started to get going, they got a couple rounds on the board, but it wasn't really anything. And the whole game, it just felt like BDS were able to just walk right at CAG, and there was nothing that CAG could really do about it. They were lacking gap awareness, they were lacking any info gathering on their gaps that wasn't active, and as you'll see in some of these clips, Dokkaebi was a very common counter from Team BDS to make that a really obnoxious kind of thing to deal with. Like, getting on those cams isn't going to be so easy if you keep getting dealt with by the Dokkaebi. So really just a rough game for CAG, and a team that struggled in their first game, was hoping they would bounce back after the Elevate match, but it seems like that was just a one-hit wonder, and so far they seem to be struggling once again. Still in it, but rough game today against BDS.
It really is too bad because I know CAG is always hopefuls for us, right? We're always excited to see them, but some more hopefuls that we saw playing today. PSG versus Elevate faced off next, and Elevate looked pretty damn hot, taking it in convincing fashion and catapulting themselves up on the scoreboard. Happy, I think you had a couple of things you wanted to say about this one.
Yeah, it was this was PSG struggling to defend those APAC imports from Brazil. We talked about it last week with CAG defending against the imports and at least letting them know that, you can't expect to win all of APAC if you're going to bring in some Brazilian players. But you can definitely expect to get some wins on the board if PSG was any indication, because Elevate looked like the better team for sure today. There were some signs of life from PSG at the end, but they couldn't even sneak it into OT. Really disappointing, seeing how well we've seen this PSG Talon team play. You wanted to believe that it was something they could sustain past Fabian, but it just didn't seem like it was super likely through this tournament. They are the first team to get eliminated from Reload after losing the one-on-one after the game. Ion took that 3-2. And they are the only team to have been eliminated so far. So a really, really big disappointment out of PSG Talon. Because, again, like I said, losing Fabian, you want to see this team continue to improve as they had been doing all of last year, and it just wasn't happening. And after that, Elevate jump up to second place with 13 points in a huge point swing, which is a big, big moment, because the team that only won one game, well, lets everybody know that given this format, if you plan it out correctly, one game is really all you need to be a top contender in terms of making those playoffs.
Up next, we had the match between Scars and C9. Scars has been the team that nobody was afraid to play until today. They came into this match swinging, and despite the fact they only managed to pick up one round in their previous two games, this one goes the distance. 7-7 match point overtime, and it ends up being decided in 15. Cloud9 do eventually, after a grueling battle, manage to take it. But I don't think Cloud9 are too happy with the performance overall. Scars really made them work for it. And coming from a team that wasn't able to get anything going any other day, it's a little bit embarrassing for Cloud9, I think, and they're going to be disappointed in the result, though they won't be disappointed in what comes from it, because in the standings, these guys now find themselves in first place, which is kind of unbelievable off the back of what was arguably a bit too close a game, but regardless, sets them up very well going forward, going into the matches throughout the rest of this week, and possibly even qualifying tomorrow.
Yeah, it's old habits die scars in this case. It's just a very, very common thing we've seen from this team time and time again. They look pretty good, and this is over past lands, right? If you aren't super familiar with Scars, this is an APAC team that has had a very high ceiling before this event. This event, they looked really, really rough the whole time, but even still, they come in today. Rec is playing like peak Rec. Back when the 1.5 was in the game, you could not step to this guy, and he looked like he was in that form again. He had some solid support, but once they hit that 6th round mark, same with a lot of the APAC teams of prior years, they just start to struggle. They get in their own heads, and that was a big, big issue. They had, I think, 5 rounds they spent on match point today and didn't win a single one of them. That is something that needs to change, but fortunately, after Rec beat Kobe Lax in the one-on-one, 2 players who had really good games today, really good days overall, they get that win in the 1v1. They keep themselves alive. They fight another day. Scars, not in the best position in the world, but in a little bit better of a spot than a team like Talon, who have already been sent home for sure.
And speaking of teams that are in bad spots, next game, G2 versus Wildcard. G2 happy. G2. I don't know what happened to this team, but excuse my French, they fucking suck. I am incredibly disappointed in what we've been seeing from G2 this tournament. They don't seem like they really woke up. It feels like they maybe forgot to practice before the event, and I don't want to just slap them too hard because I like these players. I think that they have the potential to be good. I mean, we've seen them be good. These guys were world champions. The core of this roster knows how to win. But right now, what they're doing, the way they're playing, isn't good enough. And I don't know what they can do to fix it. But opposite them, Wildcard, a little bit more of an inspiring story. They actually look very good. They were a team that a lot of folks wrote off going into this tournament. But right now, they are proving people wrong. Baby Shark especially, pulling off an MVP performance today and showing some of the haters that maybe a French import, if it makes sense, isn't that bad an idea, because he's showing his worth in the server. He's shutting people up, and I mean, I couldn't be happier to see it. I've been Baby Shark to believer since day one, Baby Shark stan, and what can I say? He's been proving me right.
Yeah, North American with some French blood, that is you. So I can see you believing in Baby Shark. Makes really checks out. But I do think Wildcard have looked pretty solid. I think it's good to see them getting some good wins. G2, though, through this game, it's really hard for me to compliment Wildcard a ton because G2 really, just like you said, looked like they were just not there today. Like they would keep going for really, really direct takes without getting a lot of map control, and then Wildcard would show them why G2 needed to get the map control by converging on basement, on first floor. They tried a fast take on second floor and it worked the first time, but then they went for a really crazy strat, taking the second floor the second time around with a Spider-Man repel, and I think they got flawless. If it wasn't flawless, it was pretty close. So G2 really just felt like they were coming in, and it felt like the ideas they were running in with weren't really gonna work, and Wildcard were very, very prepared for it, and then there just wasn't the 1v1 skill, there wasn't the coordination from G2 to come back from some of those deficits, and they would often find an early pick. They'd find something good to start off the round, and then Wildcard would come back in because G2 weren't taking the relevant control. And I know it's Consulate. It can be a really tough map to clear the whole way through while still having some time to play with if the other team doesn't just throw bodies trying to keep themselves alive on the roam. But it still just feels like G2 always went for the same ideas, and Wildcard were incredibly prepared for them to just try and make one fast play. So they stuck together, they played for their control, and they always used it really well. So it was well done by Wildcard, but it still just feels like G2 in too tough of a form to really consider this the massive statement win that I feel like Wildcard are still due for. But no, they're still due for it, I think. So, you know, it makes sense to see them play well. Yeah. I think they've been looking pretty solid so far. Another team that's been looking pretty solid so far is Loud, as they take on Fnatic in the 6th game of the day. The really solid performance. The first game we've seen so far on Border through this event, and it was really exciting to see Loud look this solid. It was my most anticipated game of the day because I thought we were going to learn a lot from it, and that we definitely did. Number one, we learned that Loud are a serious contender because they're able to dispatch of the lesser teams like it's nothing. They beat Falcons early, and they did what they needed to do against a team like Fnatic. I think they're definitely going to be a team that's competing for a playoff spot, maybe even a top 4 spot in terms of the event overall. And we learned a lot about Fnatic as well. It's that they look inexperienced. They look like they aren't super used to playing with each other. There were noticeable gaps in the defenses, some miscoordinations, some errors in terms of the macro. But I think there's a lot of promise here. Joksu, the newest addition, had a great game today. And all things considered, a really impressive individual set of performances from Fnatic, with some players like Sarks showing individual promise in some certain rounds. Overall, though, the macro does need to get a little bit more tight-knit, but you expect that from a team that has less experienced players like Sarks and Joksu and is still trying to get together, as they've only really been a 5 for a couple of months. So a lot of promise with this team, I would say. And, I mean, getting right into the next matchup, FaZe and Liquid had a very, very competitive game. El Clásico do Brasil lived up to all of the hype and more. The new look Liquid squad won in a pretty convincing fashion, going all the way to max OT, convincing in the fact that it shows that they have the wherewithal already to withstand a long game against another great team. A lot of hero plays at a disadvantages, especially from Team Liquid, as they went on a streak of 3 rounds at the end of their attacking half, or at the end of the first half rather, to get all 3 of those rounds won. But it's great to see those individuals step up. That's the thing with this team, is they have so many talented individuals. Even Ask stepping up for a big clutch at one point as well. The IGL, who, you know, is the question mark in terms of individual performance. He looks pretty solid today. But FaZe, Highbear, have had such a tough bracket so far, and they have been kind of underperforming when you look at the big picture.
It's crazy to me because I expect FaZe to be coming into this tournament as those top teams, but right now, that's not been the case. They are good, and we can see that they're good, but consistently they look like they're just struggling to get things over the line, and losing 2 out of your 3 matches is not a great look. They're left with just 3 bullets remaining after that match against Liquid, and it was... it just kind of felt like a throw to them, because it felt like FaZe were really playing better, so much to the point where I straight up thought FaZe won this game when we were working on the script for today.
You did, yeah.
I wrote a whole segment about how FaZe won, but it wasn't true. They look good. I expect them to be winning, but that's not been happening, and they need to turn this around soon, because right now, they're facing elimination tomorrow. If they lose their next match, that's it. They're going home, they're out of the tournament, and there are no 1v1s to save them. And another team facing a similar prospect, Falcons. In their match against M80 today, Falcons are struggling to work, despite some real promising ideas. And I don't know what to do. They're taken down by Fabian's new project, and Fabian is obviously having a great impact on M80, making them a much more difficult team to play. And we saw a massive first half from M80 as they pull off one of the tightest cafe defenses I've ever seen. They look strong. They're holding people back. They were locking things down consistently. You'll see a couple of rounds in here. We see a lot of M80 players who were kind of working off of each other, swinging off of each other. A lot of rounds that they were in a disadvantage, and they pressed together to make plays happen. And that was the story of this first half. But then the second half, you'll see here, this clutch from Shaiko going absolutely massive with the Deagle, able to convert that round. And that became a bit of a momentum swing for this game. Got close, they brought it back, and then another momentum swing that we'll take a look at right after these replays. Managed to switch things up one more time, and M80 were eventually able to close things down. And yeah, we're going to do a deep dive into this next clip here in just a moment, because it was an unbelievable performance from Diffuser. If we could just pull that up, please, and thank you very much. Yeah, check this out. So what's happening right now is M80 find themselves in a disadvantage. Gunnar has Case, and he has access to site. He walks into sight and he holds this long able. He manages to catch Shaiko on a rotate, equalizing the round. But that's not the impressive thing here. What's impressive is that M80 are able to slow down and make these sorts of plays happen when it's low time, when they don't really have a good win condition, because they talk to each other, they play off each other, and they come up with micro plays to make things work. And even when the microplays don't work, when things get a little messed up, when it gets a little messy towards the end of the round, they've still got the talent and skill to be able to convert these difficult situations. We see here Gunnar. He's in a bit of a bad spot. They're rapping on him from Smallbake. He's about to be shot in the back, so he decides to push into prep and is taken down by Burde. And here's Diffuser, last alive, no bullets in his main gun, and he's forced to clutch. 1v2, takes the engagement with the first one, and then breaks the line of sight, getting behind cover to be able to shut down Burde. A very impressive, game-changing clutch. And M80 look like they have finally found an iteration of the roster that has the potential to really go far. I would not be shocked to see them progressing into playoffs this tournament and maybe, just possibly, going the whole way.
It's a bold claim to make, but I do think that M80 has what it takes, right? You think that you look at this roster, 4/5 of it won a major just about a year ago. So it's a team that we know can find some success. And this is a big statement win for them to get as well. Because not only was it so dominant in that first half when they were up 5-1, but their attacks were a little rough to start. Their pacing looked off. When they wanted to go fast, they go slow. When they wanted to go slow, they go fast. It all looked weird. Tack timeout comes in though from Fabian. And then, like you said, the hero plays made it to really change that momentum. And then the last round never even really felt close. It was a great game out of M80, and they progressed to being one of the favorites so far through the tournament. Stuck at 9 points, a little bit on the outside looking in terms of that playoff picture, but definitely looking good. So I have no doubt that they will be contenders as we continue to move forward. But let's take a look at the second to last game of the day that we need to talk about. Space Station Gaming versus FearX. Now, SSG come into this game as a team that had a lot to prove. They got a win over G2, but they just came off a rough loss to Dark Zero. And FearX came into this game as a team that had won 2 games already, but CAG and G2 weren't looking the best. So it looks like a bad game on paper, and like the APAC woes of today will continue. And then FearX were just the best team ever. They just played so well, and aside from a couple of quick rounds where SSG were able to catch him off guard, FearX looked great. They would adjust perfectly. They know exactly what's going on. They look super coordinated in the micro level as well. There were moments where you'd see someone swing, another person swing off that contact. There would be moments where you'd see 2 people isolate a lurk player to try and get that man advantage before the execute comes through. They adapted off of noticing that SSG were getting a lot of success off of coordinated utility plays, as we know SSG like to do, and they would try to pick off players before they could go for those coordinated plays when they weren't expecting to have to take a fight, just to make sure they had a man advantage, and then they'd go back, play off the site, play off each other super well. And then on the attacks as well, it was so good. Just outstanding game from FearX, a genuinely really well played game. And at this point, there are 3 3-0 teams, W7M, Furia, 2 of the best teams of the past 2 years in Siege, and FearX. The third one, don't ask me how they got there, because I'm going to start glazing. But also, it is insane to think this team is one of the 3 undefeated ones left. They've had an easier competition than the other 2, but I really feel like they are looking outstanding. As for the SSG side, though, questions about whether or not they're losing the mental game, and a lot more questions than that. Because today against FearX, it looked like they were giving up too many 1v1s. They were kind of just tilting and wanted to get back into the game by winning some fights. Maybe that was what Forest did for them. I've heard people speculating about this. So, you want to make sure that some of those questions are answered, and they've got to answer some of them heading into day number 4.
I think the results speak for themselves here, Happy. Just looking at that last matchup, FearX, they are looking good. They've got the scoreline now, 3-0, like you mentioned, and it's for a reason. I just want to make that clear. Like, you mentioned that you think that the schedule they had might have been a little bit easier than some of the other opponents, but FearX are genuinely playing some top-notch Siege right now. This is the most impressed I've been by a Korean roster, full stop, ever, even more so than the Damwon Kia roster back in the day, which those guys almost made main stage in Sweden. Like, they were ready, they were right there, they were at the top, and these guys are better. They're here to play, and they are taking Rio by freaking storm, man. And the only other game we've got to talk about today, W7M DZ. W7M is so freaking good. One of the other 3-0 teams we have going still. They managed to take down DZ in a very tight overtime match. It went all the way. there were some impressive plays throughout and some real good kills. A lot of battling back and forth in the game. But there was one round that I wanted to take a particular look at because despite the fact that W7M took this game, I don't want to discount DZ. Let's take a look at this. We'll pull this up. So, situation here is Dota's has Case and Dark Zero have themselves at a disadvantage. Spirits is down below. He needs to make his way upstairs, and all W7M need to do to win this round is get bomb down and hold this post plant. Huge IQ play from Spirits here, running down below to try and take the player out through the floor. The fact that he knows exactly where that spot is just by heart is insane for starters, but almost manages to pull it off. But then this, a trade from Citizen and a shot from Spirits. They managed to get the numbers even, leaving just Palu to cover this plant. Look where the case is. It's behind the bomb chassis, and Spirits immediately realizes this, hops on, and waits for Palu to jump in the window before popping off Case to be able to take the fight. He's got his body positioned to swing as quickly as possible without needing to spin around. It's a crazy, huge IQ play out of him, and he was a bit quieter today. But overall, him and Citizen continue to deliver in the big moments. I'm excited for this team going forward. And I know they lost today, and it feels a bit weird that I'm glazing the DZ roster, but they're just a really standout one for me, and I feel like I need to talk about them, because everyone knows how good W7M is, but I feel like people are still discovering that DZ are also at that upper echelon of teams now, where they haven't been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's great to see. I think that org of Dark Zero, like you said, it's been a little bit since they've been one of those top contenders, but it is good to see DZ. But I'm really impressed by just how well W7M have been playing this event. They had a really disappointing finish at SI. The Palu pickup was criticized by some, praised by others. It, wasn't sure if that was the solution they needed, but by all accounts, you add one of the most historically dominant players from one of the most historically dominant regions in Siege's history, you're probably not going to get much worse. But they've gotten even better since SI. And not only have they been looking really solid and looking in great form, number one, they have been dominating opening kills on the whole tournament. I think over the course of their last 2 games, they've only lost about 4 opening duels total in the last 2 maps. Yesterday, they only lost 2, maybe 3 against FaZe, and then today, towards the end of the series against Dark Zero, I am going off of what I remember the casters talking about, but they had said that every single round but 2, W7M had won the opening pick, and then I believe they won the opening pick in that last round as well. But still, the general idea is that they are dominating these entry fights. They are looking incredibly dominant in one-on-ones and looking dangerous to take fights against. And on top of that, the 3 teams they've beaten have only lost 1 other game. FaZe lost to Liquid today in max OT. Other than that, FaZe won their other game. DZ haven't lost outside of W7M, and neither have M80, and they've played some great teams at that. So I think not only have W7M looked in great form on the eye test, they've beaten the best teams to get here. And I think in general, right now, they are my favorites for taking all of Reload. I know it's still best of 1s. We need to see the best of 3s and how those work out. But I think W7M is back in tip-top shape. And Hyber, I am really feeling good about this roster and their chances moving forward.
Palu is that guy right now, eh? Like he's making his way into the team, and suddenly they just look like they're themselves again. And yeah, I gotta say, I'm really excited for W7M. I like that roster. I love Loben. But moving into tomorrow's games, my favorite for the matches tomorrow, I got Wildcard versus SSG. 2 NA rosters. Wildcard, I think, this is their chance to really prove themselves. I know SSG's been having a rougher tournament, but this is a team that knows Wildcard, that has the potential to really counter-strat them. And if Wildcard can come up with a game plan that deals with SSG, despite the fact that SSG knows them super well, I think that'll be what really establishes them for me as one of the teams at this tournament. They've looked really good. They've impressed me so far. I still need a bit of convincing, Happy. Like, you haven't gotten 100% on board with the Wildcard pick, but I think they're there. And once they win tomorrow against SSG and send those boys home, Wildcard, we're moving forward.
Calling his shot too. I like the confidence. I will say, if they're able to take down SSG as well, SSG is unfortunately another one of those teams where I feel like it's hard to be fully convinced by beating them, especially since they've only got 1 win. But I will relent that 3-1 by this point in the tournament, and you've played some pretty solid teams. You're looking good, right? You can't say at any point, especially if it's another North American team as well. Because if they're looking better than SSG right now, there are some serious problems for SSG. And then Wildcard could join the conversation of being a LAN contender, or at least a LAN qualifying contender, which is what they've struggled to do for so many years in a row, being so close yet so far so many times from making it to LANs. My most anticipated matchup, though, tomorrow, I'm going with FearX again. But this time, FearX versus Falcons. I feel like this game's what we all stand to learn the most from, because it's Falcons 1-2, but they're not a 1-2 team. They were the best team across the whole year from last year. They should be better than their record. Are they sandbagging, or are they really just struggling at reload, or maybe they're not going 100%? Maybe they don't think it's one of the legit events of the year because there's no SI points. I don't know. But tomorrow they can prove whether or not they are really here to play, whereas FearX, with a win over Falcons tomorrow, would prove that they are fully legit. No more doubts, no more questions of they've had an easy schedule, they're not a true 3-0 team. A win over Falcons, to me, proves that this team is the best Korean team, like you said, maybe that we've ever seen. They're at the very least the first contender at a real APAC championship since Damwon Kia about 4 years ago. So that's definitely going to be something I'm looking forward to. You know, I don't hide my bias. I love APAC, and I'm really hoping to see FearX get that win over Falcons tomorrow. But either way, we'll either see that Falcons can prove to everybody that they are still just as good and they just had a rough opening. Maybe the BO1s weren't the best for them, or that FearX can prove that it was not a fluke and they are really here to play. I'm excited. It's one of the first games of tomorrow as well, so I will be up bright and early at 11 a.m. Eastern to make sure that I am there for it, no matter what.
Bright and early at 11 a.m. Classic happy, we love it. Classic gamer hours.
Gamer time. Gamer
time,
baby.
Thank you guys all so much for tuning into the matches today. SiegeCenter, we have a little bit more production value going on here today. Thank you so much to Zayon Prod for hopping in and helping out with doing some graphics and putting this whole thing together, running replays in the background. He's been an absolute gem. But yeah, that's going to be it for us. And we will be back tomorrow with more coverage. Hope you guys enjoyed. And make sure to drop by, tune in tomorrow. We'll see you guys there. Peace out.